The air is thick, a blanket of heat and humidity clinging to the skin. Below, a carpet of triple canopy jungle stretches to the horizon, an unbroken sea of impossible green. Through the vibrating plexiglass of a helicopter cockpit, a small clearing in the trees grows larger, a tiny wound in the vast wilderness. This is the IA Drang Valley, Vietnam. The date on the pilot's watch reads November 14, 1965. Sunlight glints off the olive drab paint of the Huey helicopter, its rotors slicing the heavy air with a rhythmic, percussive beat. Inside, Captain Bruce Crandall's hands are steady on the controls, his eyes scanning the instruments, then the clearing below, then the dark, menacing tree-line that surrounds it. Beside him, his co-pilot gives a thumbs up. Young American soldiers, their faces a mixture of bravado and apprehension, sit packed in the cargo bay, their M16 rifles held tight. The landing zone, designated X-ray, looks quiet, almost peaceful. The first wave of helicopters touches down in a swirl of dust and clipped grass, depositing their human cargo before lifting away. The soldiers fan out, their boots sinking into the soft Vietnamese soil. They establish a perimeter, their senses on high alert. Another wave of Hueys descends, Crandall's among them, delivering more troops into the burgeoning American foothold. The air smells of jet fuel and damp earth. A nervous quiet hangs over the clearing, the silence between a lightning flash and the thunder it creates. For a moment, the mission seems routine, another insertion into the endless war. The men on the ground dig in, waiting. The helicopters depart, banking sharply over the trees to return to base for the next load. Then the world explodes. From the tree-line, 1,000 hidden muzzles flash in unison. The air rips apart with the high-velocity crack of enemy rifles and the chatter of machine guns. Puffs of dirt dance across the landing zone as bullets tear through the grass. A young soldier cries out, clutching his leg. Another falls silent, his helmet rolling in the dust. The quiet clearing transforms into a crucible of fire, a killing ground. The American troops are surrounded, outnumbered, and fighting for their lives. Over the radio, a frantic voice cuts through the static. The landing zone is hot. Repeat, X-ray is red hot. All helicopters are ordered to abort their missions. The risk is too great, the enemy fire is too intense, too accurate. At the staging base, pilots watch the smoke rise from the distant battlefield. The mission is over. But for Captain Bruce Crandall, looking at the wounded being brought back by the first fleeing ships, a cold resolve settles in his gut. His men are down there. They are trapped. They need ammunition. They need water. The wounded need to be evacuated. The order is to stand down, but the unwritten code is to never leave a man behind. Crandall turns to his fellow pilot, Major Ed Freeman, a silent question passing between them. They both know what flying back into that inferno means. It is a volunteer mission, a flight with no guarantee of return. Without a word, Crandall climbs back into the cockpit of his unarmed Huey, its call sign, Ancient Serpent 6. The engine whines back to life. He is going back in. The helicopter is loaded not with soldiers, but with crates of ammunition, boxes of medical supplies, and precious water cans. The green jungle canopy rushes below as the Huey races back toward landing zone X-ray. Smoke now billows from the battlefield, a dark gray pillar against the blue sky. Red and green tracers streak up from the trees, lazy arcs of light that hide supersonic death. The rhythmic whump-whump-whump of the rotor blades is now punctuated by a sharp, metallic pinging sound. A round punches through the fuselage near the door gunner's foot. Another cracks the plexiglass windscreen, a spiderweb of fracture appearing inches from Crandall's face. He doesn't flinch. His eyes remain fixed on the clearing ahead. He descends into the storm. The helicopter shudders as it enters the vortex of concentrated fire. On the ground, desperate soldiers see the Huey emerge from the smoke like an apparition. They provide covering fire, their rifles blazing at the unseen enemy in the jungle. Crandall expertly brings the helicopter to a hover just above the blood-soaked grass, a stable target amidst a hurricane of bullets. The crew chiefs kick the supplies out as fast as they can. Crates of ammunition tumble onto the ground. Water cans land with a heavy thud. The moment the supplies are clear, wounded men are carried toward the helicopter. A medic, his uniform stained dark red, directs the living and the dying. One soldier is dragged by his friend, his face pale and slick with sweat. Another is lifted by 3 men, his body limp. They are hauled aboard, laid on the vibrating metal floor. The air inside the cabin fills with the scent of cordite and blood. Crandall holds a hover, his hands and feet making 1,000-minute adjustments, keeping the ship steady while the world outside is pure chaos. Then, with the wounded secured, he pulls on the collective. The Huey claws its way back into the sky, away from the grasping hands of the battle. He delivers the wounded and the dying to the aid station, the skids of his helicopter barely touching the ground before he turns back. The fuel gauge drops. The ammunition count on the door guns dwindles. The airframe groans under the stress of countless bullet strikes. Yet he flies on. A second trip. A third. A fourth. Each time he approaches the landing zone, the enemy fire grows more intense, more accurate. They have his flight path zeroed in. They know he is coming back. Through his cracked windscreen, Crandall sees the battle unfolding in brutal, intimate detail. He sees muzzle flashes wink from the elephant grass. He sees a mortar round explode, sending men diving for cover. He sees the grim, determined faces of the infantrymen on the ground, their hope renewed each time they hear the sound of his rotors cutting through the gunfire. His helicopter is their only lifeline, a fragile metal angel in a sky filled with demons. A fifth flight. A sixth. The sun beats down, baking the metal of the cockpit. Sweat drips into his eyes, but his hands never leave the controls. A seventh flight. An eighth. He delivers more ammunition. He evacuates more wounded. The floor of his helicopter is slick with blood. The faces of the men he rescues are a blur of pain, fear, and profound gratitude. They are boys barely out of their teens, caught in the first major battle of a long and brutal war. A ninth flight. A 10th. The door gunners are firing constantly, their machine guns growing hot. Brass casings litter the floor of the Huey. A round severs a hydraulic line, and the controls grow sluggish. Crandall fights the wounded machine, wrestling it through the sky, refusing to abandon the men below. An 11th flight. A 12th. The sheer repetition is staggering, a testament to a courage that defies all logic. He flies through a curtain of fire that has already driven off armed gunships in a transport helicopter with no armor to speak of. By the end of the day, as the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, painting the smoke-filled sky in hues of orange and red, Bruce Crandall makes his 14th and final flight into landing zone X-ray. His helicopter, Old Shaky, is riddled with holes, barely airworthy. He has been flying for hours, under constant, relentless fire. He has evacuated some 75 wounded soldiers, men who would have surely died in that jungle clearing without him. He lands one last time, picks up the last of the urgent casualties, and lifts off, the silhouette of his battered Huey disappearing into the twilight. The years pass. The Vietnam War fades from the headlines into the history books. The sounds of battle in the Drang Valley are replaced by the quiet hum of memory. Bruce Crandall returns home, a pilot who did his duty on one impossible day. The stories of his bravery are told by the men whose lives he saved, a legend passed between veterans. But for decades, his actions go without official national recognition. Then, in 2007, the story finds its final chapter. A much older Bruce Crandall stands tall in the East Room of the White House. His hair is white, but his gaze is as steady as it was in that cockpit so many years ago. The President of the United States speaks of a day of fire and courage, of a pilot who refused to leave his brothers behind. A blue, silk ribbon holding the nation's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor, is placed around his neck. The gold star rests on his chest, a symbol not for a single act, but for 14 separate flights into hell, a testament to the quiet hero who became the angel of Drang. Tell me your favorite war story I should talk about next. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video.